Good morning. I'm going to try a third try of this chapter. Things have been happening with the video program, but anyway, this is chapter 17, and we're going to start on page 161, the left-hand column. Um, the very top talks about skills practitioners use in developing the relationships with their clients. And just want to say skills and these skills, trust, empathy, nonverbal and verbal communication, active listening, group leadership, they're all described in the section. It's a really good section. I just think that should be bolded. I don't want you to miss those skills way at the top. This is the kind of the prerequisite material for doing your discussion posting on therapeutic use of self and the Good Will Hunting movie. Also about that movie, the clips that I've put on there are really good examples of um, a lot of these skills in use, even though it's just a movie. At the bottom of the left-hand column on page 161, um, there's information about universal stages of loss, and you've probably all studied these in one course or another. I just want to emphasize that not everyone goes through these stages, and not everyone goes through these stages in the same order. So don't be trying to understand your client strictly adhering to those stages in that order. And you also should never rush someone into the next stage thinking they've been in that stage long enough. Um, the middle of the right-hand column on page 161, again, there's a place where therapeutic use of self is bolded, but I was going to say awareness of oneself is a skill that needs to be developed, and that should also be in bold. Um, that's a really important skill. And so on page 162 in the right-hand column, self-awareness is talked about, and at the bottom of that column, there's some self-awareness exercises. That's really good. Then on page 163, it goes into specifically talking about the different skills like developing trust. Um, and it talks about under trust, the use of self-disclosure. I want you to look at those video clips and you'll see a fair amount of self-disclosure on the part of the therapist, Sean. Um, be aware of what it says that you'd never want to disclose information about yourself unless it's really helpful. Sometimes people start to use self-disclosure and it ends up to be a therapy session for themselves. Um, so you use a lot of good judgment about when and how much to disclose. Um, developing empathy, a good section. Realize you can never really place yourself in someone else's perspective or context, but you can come close and you can try to listen with active listening, which is talked about later, um, and good self-awareness and be empathetic. Page 164, verbal communication, good section, nonverbal communication. On page 165, I just want to point out that at the bottom of the left-hand column, just above the picture, it talks about smiling, touching, leaning toward the client, making eye contact. These are all part of nonverbal communication. Be aware that touching is not nonverbal communication that's acceptable in every culture. So be culturally aware and sensitive and use those parts of nonverbal communication that are appropriate for that particular client. Page 166, active listening. Again, we've all heard of these, reflecting and clarifying. It'd be a good idea to work with someone and record yourself, even if it's just audio, and listen to how you sound when you say, I hear you saying, and then you go into the interpretation of that. You can sound really trite doing that, and it can be very transparent to the client that you really don't know what they're saying, and you're trying to use this technique. So just listen carefully and clarify with people in your own words, and be genuine. And if you really can't understand or identify with it, just keep listening and talking. Sometimes people just need to talk, and we all know that. I want to point out on page 167, group leadership skills. This section is so OT. It's really the heart of OT. So I want you to read that, read it 2 or 3 times, how they talk about how the group is used, in this case, a cooking group. And that's it for chapter 17. I was looking through chapter 18 to see if there was anything I want to see, and I saw this. Lots of scratches. And I would say this is on therapeutic reasoning. I wouldn't say don't read the chapter, but be skeptical as you read it. I'm not sure this is a really well written chapter in this book. It might have been good to end with chapter 17. Um, so that's it for now. And if there's any question about this video, remember your discussion boards are not just to respond to the client, to the prompt. The discussion boards are for you to ask questions as well of each other and of me. Okay, take care.